Hey guys, OG Albine here, bringing you guys another episode of Draft League Study. Today we're going to be looking at one of my absolute favorite mons of Gen 8, being Copperajah. This thing is an absolute unit. I love its design. I think it's so cool. It's a pure steel type, and I think it's going to be really good in draft, actually. Some people, would agree with me. Some people would say it looks a little bit like it's going to be a little bit overrated. It's a kind of like Gen 8's Mudsdale, where we thought Mudsdale was going to be insane early Gen 7. Ended up not being as good as people thought. Still a great mon, but, not as insane. But nonetheless, I do think Copperajah is going to be really, really good. And today we're going to explain why. So yeah, with that being said, though, let's jump right into the stats of Copperajah. Now, as you can see, its first two right there, the HP and the attack are incredibly high. 122 base HP, so it's going to be eating some hits decently. 130 attack, which is great, packed on with its two abilities, which we'll talk about more so in a little bit. One being Heavy Metal, which it can abuse with moves like Heavy Slam and Heat Crash, and the other being Sheer Force, which it has a plethora of moves to, really abuse that with. And its stab being Iron Head is, the really, really big one. But then it gets cool stuff like Play Roughs and Headbutt, other stuff like that too that can potentially have secondary effects and get that Sheer Force boost. Other than that, pretty mediocre across, 69 defense and 69 SPDF, so it's not the bulkiest thing in the world, but the HP does make up for it in a sense, so you can kind of fully invest into a specific stat if you really need to eat that one hit. And it won't be the worst mod in the world in taking those hits. 80 special attack is usable, but you're not going to be using it most of the time, though with Sheer Force, that does make it a lot stronger than it really looks to be. And again, it has moves like a Flash Cannon, and let me see what other special coverage is before I just completely write that off. I don't think it has the greatest special coverage. Yeah, it's pretty negligible, but if you want to run like a weird workup, Flash Cannon type set, definitely viable if you want to run mixed in the league, because again, this is the league format. Also gets Earth Power. That's another great one. So Flash Cannon plus Earth Power. You can potentially make special Copperajah work actually in a specific matchup, which is pretty darn cool. Again, especially in a league setting. And 30 speed is ridiculously slow. Not too surprising there. However, that is very solid if you are running Trick Room, which is what we're going to talk about in a little bit. But yeah, overall, Copperajah stats very, very top heavy in its first two. The other stuff kind of rounded out and kind of balanced it out a little bit, but incredibly strong and pretty darn bulky with that fat HP stat. Next up, we're going to jump into the moves. We have a couple different slides. We're going to talk about 4 moves at a time and, potentially what they can do to help this thing out. Iron Head is very, very nice for Copperajah, especially if you're running Sheer Force. This is going to be your main stab if you're running that ability over Heavy Metal, which is really, really nice. And you're not really missing out on the flinch chance being due to how slow you are anyways. Power Whip is very nice for bulky waters that would want to switch in on this thing, usually. Stuff like your Milotics and Rotom Wash the world that would switch in on your Steel Stab really, really well. Play Rough is a move that is boosted by the Sheer Force, which is also really, really nice. It's good for hitting dragons, stuff like that. Fighting types that might want to switch in and take advantage of your Steel type defensively. Earthquake is what's going to let you hit opposing Steel types, which is very, very nice because otherwise they would deal with you pretty well if you aren't running this. Or a couple other coverage moves that get such a superpower. It also gets access to Heavy Slam and Heat Crash. Like I said, you're going to be using the Heavy Metal ability when you're using these two. Heat Crash is especially really, really cool for this thing to get to, again, help it break through those steel types, and Heat Crash Heavy Metal off of this mod, where I think it's like 1,400 something pounds, is pretty insane. It's going to make it ridiculously heavy and ridiculously strong. Throw off those Heavy Slams and Heat Crashes, obviously really, really nice. Also access to Zen Headbutt, another Sheer Force boosted move. Could be nice for, the Toxapexes of the world, but I suppose you have Earthquake for that. But if you're running Sheer Force, then I believe Zen Headbutt would be doing more. Rock Slide is another move that you can take advantage of with the Sheer Force. You can hit, monster above the ground. There's flying types that would, traditionally maybe switch on you and take you on well if they had coverage for you to hit you. Rock Slide is obviously a really nice move to hit those things, which is pretty cool. Next up, we're going to talk about some more utility moves that this thing would get. Stuff like Taunt, which is obviously really nice. Actually really nice in Asterix. Really nice for stuff like maybe the Toxapex of the world, because you can invest this thing's speed, though we are really slow. You can invest to outspeed really slow things. Stuff with base 30 speed, base 40 potentially. Stuff like that. If they aren't running any speed, you can definitely outspeed them. Even base 50 if you want to run a bunch of speed. You can outspeed them and potentially go for a taunt and stop them, which could be really cool. It has access to Curse for setup, which is awesome because it'll boost your defense while you still have that fat HP stat. So you can go for like a SPDEF Curse Talk set, which we'll talk about a little bit later. I think it's a pretty cool idea in the league format. It has access to Stealth Rock, so it can be a semi-reliable Stealth Rocker, and has Whirlwind for anti-setup, which is obviously really cool for this thing. So, as you can see, it has a plethora of moves to abuse both offensively and in a, not as much a plethora of support moves, but it has a decent amount of them to where it's not just going to be, your token attacker with its 2 abilities. It's still going to have some utility outside of that, which is obviously really cool. But yeah, now that we've gone over some moves, we should probably jump into some potential sets. Got a lot of ideas for this thing, especially being that it has 2 very useful abilities. So we're going to just kind of jump in and go from there. First up, we have an AV set. I think AV on this thing could be incredibly nice because you already do have that beefy beefy HP stat, so compounding that on top of an AV, making a very good super def wall. It's obviously really nice. You could run either sheer force or heavy metal depending on your matchup. I'm going to be saying that a lot in this video, just a heads up, obviously, because again, it's going to be matchup dependent whether or not you want that Iron Head as your stab or your heavy slam. If you want Earthquake over Heat Crash, something like that, you're obviously going to run one or the other ability, so it's 100% dependent on you. And also, there's going to be very general EVs in this thing. Obviously, I said this in the Dragapult video, but in the draft format, you're going to be able to customize your EVs much more, but, to potentially speed creep. And like I said with this thing, speed creeping, not speeding certain things, or, only going a certain amount of attack investment so you can get a 2-hit KO or OKO on this one thing, or have enough bulk investment to live this specific hit once or twice or something like that. So obviously VEVs will be varied. These are kind of just like a rough general outline of things. I could see it doing pretty decently in the format. But yeah, let's jump back into it. I'm rambling a little bit. You can run either sheer force or heavy metal depending on your matchup. Right, where you just have a max HP, max attack stat. Play rough, power whip, iron head, heavy slam, earthquake, heat crash, rock slide, stone edge. So a bunch of different options coverage-wise that you can go for. You can go for a Zen headbutt on this if you want. You can go for a super power if you're facing, like, I don't know, what would really be good superpower be great for? I suppose a T-Tar, but you could be hitting that with an iron head or a heavy slam otherwise, so that's not the best example. But superpower is a pretty viable option. You can even throw an outrage there if you really wanted to. So this thing has a pretty decent amount of coverage options to potentially throw against your opponent's team, and AV allows it to have the move slots to throw on those 4 attacks and really wreak havoc on your opponent's team while taking those special hits, soaking hits from things like fairies, maybe some special dragons and stuff like that, being able to eat up those hits and retaliate back with a big hit, which is really just kind of personifying this thing in its tank role that it's supposed to fill. Next up, we have a Life Orb Sheer Force Copperajah with Iron Head, Stealth Rock, Rock Slide, Earthquake / Superpower. This is going to be a Rocker 3 attack set kind of thing. I don't really see you needing any other moves besides this thing, and I think having this thing in a Rocks role would be obviously phenomenal. Iron Head, Rock Slide, and EQ / Superpower is going to hit a majority of teams neutrally or super effectively. It's just really good coverage to hit mons in general. Obviously super nice. Unfortunately, Earthquake and Superpower, you are going to take that Life Orb chip because those aren't secondary effect moves, but it doesn't really get, fighting or ground coverage that would be warranted to use that has a secondary effect. So I think it's something you can bite the bullet on. Take 1 turn of Life Orb, won't really kill you. And you're going to be clicking Iron Head a lot of the time anyways, because it is a pretty good attacking typing. You're only going to be clicking Earthquake on things that resist Iron Head, so I suppose it could be a mix of the two. But I still feel like this set could be pretty solid. Throwing on Stealth Rock there, but if you really need it in the matchup, you could take off rocks, go for attacks once again, and just go for as much coverage as possible, and really switch up your moves and wreak some havoc like that. Next up, we have a Choice Banded Copperajah. This time it is heavy metal specifically, with heavy metal, Heat Crash, Earthquake, and Stone Edge. This is just going to be raw breaking power. Heavy Slam and Heat Crash are going to hit so many things, so depending on how your prediction game is and, how good you're feeling that game and, catching things and going for Heavy Slam versus Heat Crash, depending on what would want to come in. Like, if you really think there's Steel type's going to come in, etc., you can click that Heavy Crash, catch them, and then Heavy Slam's free for the rest of the game. You also have Earthquake and Stone Edge and stuff like that just for general coverage. Is obviously really cool. This thing is here to kind of get in on free turns, on momentum, on double downs, stuff like that, and just click buttons and try and pick up some KOs. Next up, we have a Shuka-Berry Copperajah, which is very similar to the Life Orb 3 attack set that we had before. We have Stealth Rock, Iron Head / Heavy Slam, Earthquake slash Heat Crash, and then Rock Slide slash Power Whip with the Sugar Berry. Sheer Force or Heavy Metal, like I said, kind of depends on your matchup, but this is, you know, a pretty good reliable rocker. You can swap out Sugar for something like maybe a Chocolate Berry or something like that, or even like a Focus Sash, a Custap Berry would obviously be really cool. I don't believe it's released in the games yet, but if you're playing a Showdown League that allows it, Custap could definitely be a pretty viable option. But this thing's job is to get up rocks, maybe get off a big hit or two or something like that on some slower things, and kind of go from there. So I think this set could be really viable as a good, reliable rocker if you really need them up in a specific matchup to check a certain threat against your team. Then lastly, we have a pretty fun set. This one's going to be much more niche than the typical set you would see ran on this thing, but I figure it could be really cool in some matches and get some people off guard. We have a Spadef Rest Talk Curse Iron Head / Heavy Slam Copper. That was a mouthful. Basically, I have a Curse Talk Copperajah with either Sheer Force or Heavy Metal, depending on your matchup. I kind of like Sheer Force for this one with Iron Head, simply because it does have more PP, and with this mon, the whole point is kind of boost up as much as possible, sit on the field, be annoying, and potentially just get unkillable for your opponent. And I think that's a little bit harder with this thing, Spadef not being the greatest in the world. It's not going to be as good of a Rest Talker as like something like a Starlax or something like that. But it's still going to be very solid nonetheless, and if you can take out specific mods on the opponent's team that you're going to need to do, this thing can really do well, honestly. I totally want to try this set out, depending on if I receive the matchup to do so. I really think this could be a pretty cool way to catch your opponent off guard, obviously. And yeah, that's going to be the last of the sets. Before we go, I want to talk about some ones that I think would be potentially really, really good with Copperajah, and some roles I could see it, really thriving and fulfilling. One thing we didn't really talk about so far in this video very much yet is going to be Trick Room. I think this thing is phenomenal on Trick Room due to its low speed and its just, incredible breaking power, allowing you to just kind of switch up moves, outspeed everything, and then just blow them back. One in particular I really like with it, I love Copperajah with it. I think it, fits very, very well, whether that be Copperajah and, Sun and Moon, not Sun and Moon, National Dex Leagues or, Showdown Leagues that are Galar Dex only, if they're allowing Cofag, which we're assuming will eventually be in the game because Galarian Your Mask is in. I think Cofag fits very well, as well as Rodriguez. I think Rodriguez is also, definitely a really, really viable option for it. Honestly, Rodriguez is probably a little bit better, to be completely honest. But it's going to check those fighting types for it and set up Trick Room, which is obviously ridiculously nice. I also love Hatterene. I think Hatterene is great for it because it has that Trick Room support, and it also has access to Healing Wish, and Healing Wish healing this thing back up to full after it's taken a hit or two, allowing it to throw off some big, big hits afterwards. It's obviously super, super dope. I think that's super, super solid for it. You also have things like, Jellicent plus Uniclus also fit very, very well. And another thing I think is really, really needed with Copperajah, I really think it appreciates a good Wish Passer, a good Fairy type Wish Passer. Something like a Sylveon, a Clefable, something like that. Potentially, let's see, Wish. Sorry, I'm trying to see exactly what all gets Wish in the Galar Dex only type format. So something like Clefable, something like Togekiss, Gardevoir even as like a budget fairy for that. Aromatisse, Sylveon, those all pair very, very well. Keeping this thing healthy is very, very nice in my opinion. I think it can really, really help it out, which is obviously super dope. And then lastly, I think Volturn is really nice with this thing. Having ways to get this thing in for free to throw off a big hit is going to be super, super clutch. Being able to, have Mons U-turn, Volt switch around, get a little bit of chip, and then have Copperajah come in and just deal a final blow is obviously super, super dope. So maybe drafting a Rotom with this thing would be super clean. Maybe a Darmanitan would be nice. You're also going to lure in Steel types. Darmanitan, Galarian Darmanitan. Sorry, I should have specified that. Luring in Steel types, maybe catch them with an Earthquake or Flare Blitz to kind of weaken them for Copperajah, or getting Copperajah on them themselves. If they don't have a way of hitting your big elephant there, you can throw off a Heat Crash or a Superpower or an Earthquake or something like that and put on a ton of hurt on them. So I think Volturn with this thing would be obviously super, super nice. I'm a big Doug Trio advocate, but if you can draft Dougie, I think Dougie would be great with this thing, trapping those Steel types, and, maybe potentially those Fire types that would be able to switch in on its stab. A bunch of different things that I can trap and really annoy with this guy right here. But yeah, that's going to be Copperajah. We went over a lot in this video. I think this thing can fit many roles. I think it can kind of accomplish a bunch of things with these two separate abilities. And I think that's something that makes it really good, is the option to run both of those. So your opponent doesn't know what to calc for initially. It has to prep for both, potential options, whether it be like a heat crash or an earthquake from this thing. Depending on what ability it's going to run, is going to be kind of dependent on the coverage that it has. So that's something your opponent has to keep in mind, and that really does help with prep and all that good stuff. But yeah, if you guys did enjoy this episode of the Draft League Study, be sure to drop a like and subscribe just to catch our daily content as it pretty much goes up, I guess. Oh man, I probably shouldn't have said daily yet. Our daily content as it goes up daily. But whether that be Wi-Fi battles, Draft League Study stuff, Showdown Lives, eventually Draft League battles once our league starts starting up and all that stuff. Be sure to stick around for that stuff. If you have any suggestions, like mods you want to see, or suggestions that you'd have for me that would make this series better, because I really am enjoying recording them. And I think they can be really cool for people that are just starting out in Draft League and want to know what a mod does and all that stuff. Definitely let me know, because I want to make these as good as possible. So constructive criticism is 100% appreciated. But yeah, with that being said, thank you guys so much for watching. I'm going to get out of here.